The Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on The Big Show, lots to get to. What a day it has been. And we didn't all die. Evidently, there was an asteroid that was supposed to hit Earth today. It zipped on by us. So, good thing number one, we didn't all die from the asteroid hitting the planet. And that's a good thing. Other good thing. I didn't get killed while talking about voting in the voter line today, where I spent my entire day. I spent my entire day talking to voters who were in line, helping make sure they were in the proper line, and then, talking about candidates, and good candidates. George Scott is a good candidate. Brittany, also a very, very good candidate. Brittany Rodas. And all down the list, all the Democratic candidates on the list, I think are good, solid candidates, and I hope they do really well tonight. But I was in what is an interesting district. I mean, it was a fairly well-to-do district. Some really gigantic houses, people with a lot of money, mostly a lot of angry white people. They were very angry, very angry. And it's. Before I get into some of the stories of today, I had this moment where I'm interacting with these people of much greater means than me, and people who they've won at life. They've got the big house, the big cars, they've done really well, and to watch them. You would think that they were the most miserable people on this planet because they were angry. I mean, just the kind of, not just, I stubbed my toe, I'm upset. The kind of visceral anger and hatred and the kind of thing that, I find really scary. Old white people scare me because and these old guys think they're 20 again. And that's the other scary part. It's really a bizarre kind of time in our country. And I started thinking about it. I go, look, I get some of the Trump voters in places like Ohio, here and in Pennsylvania, who lost their jobs, in the good steel worker jobs, the good auto worker jobs, the good trucking jobs that have been destroyed by deregulation, and all of the crushing of what was once a prosperous working class. I get their anger. I do, because I'm with them. I'm one of them. I'm one of those people. I'm angry. I was just talking to my wife a little bit ago. The job that I do now paid much better. It was a much better standard of living 20 or 30 years ago than it is now. Still a good job. Still pays reasonably well with excellent benefits. But it was better in the other days. A much higher standard of living. And as that diminishes, as things get more difficult, I get when people get angry. I seriously do. I get it. But these are people where life isn't getting harder for them. They just came off the greens, playing golf across the street, drove up in their Cadillac, had their big breakfast before they came over in their group. And it's one of these things going, what exactly do you have to be angry about? And these are people who viscerally, just out of their pores comes anger and hatred. And, as I walked up to the because I got to the polls a couple minutes before 7, and there was already a line around the block, over the hills and down through the dale and all kinds of stuff. In fact, the people who got there right at 7 o'clock ended up waiting like 2 hours to vote because they were just packed. And, I went through and I greeted everybody. Hey, good to see you. Hey, thanks for coming out and voting. Civic duty. Yeah. Here, I hope you'll vote for these candidates here. Take the little piece of paper, or don't take the little piece of paper. And I'm under no illusions that by me handing them a piece of paper that they're going to change their mind while in line. I'm under no illusions of that. But, for somebody who was going to vote for somebody, it was a reinforcement. Oh, yeah, thanks. I appreciate this. And there were some people who were very nice. The majority The majority of Trump voters that I came across today were just angry and hateful people, and I feel sorry for them. I came home and I really felt so, I hope their lives aren't that hateful and angry at home. But I had a moment, and the only moment where I would have gone to violence, and I don't advocate it, so please don't think that I do, was I handed a little piece of paper to a nice older woman, and she's like, "Thank you very much." She goes, "Yeah," and she put it in her hands, and she clearly wasn't going to look at it or vote for the people on there, but she was very nice, as I would do if someone handed me something. Hey, thanks a lot, appreciate it. Go on to the next person. We're good. And her husband really, really ticked off. He reached over and he snatched it out of her hands, and I mean to the point to where she was like, "Whoa!" And I turned back to him. I go, "Man, that was really unnecessary." I go, "I get you didn't want it, but did you have to do that?" I said, I told him, I said, "I was 30, if you were 30 years younger, I would knock you on your backside. That was totally uncalled for and rude." And there were a couple of those moments today where people were just unnecessarily rude to each other. And look, I've been doing this stuff for years. I've been handing out flyers on lines for got to be going on 40 years now. And I've never seen it this hateful and angry. I've never seen it this uncivil. There was actually a guy, one of the girls who was handing out the same flyers that I was. There was actually a guy who took the flyer, blew his nose in it, and threw it on the ground. And you go, again, back to this, was that necessary? Was that right? And this is where I'm concerned for us as a country. Because there are a lot of angry old white guys who do nothing but watch Fox News and get all lathered up to the point to where I don't know if there's a way to come back from this. There were people who had to have their snarky comments, and you go, "Hey, take it or don't. No sweat off my back." But they had to throw that jab in there. They had to throw that extra jab. "No thanks, hey, keep it." Shove it up your behind. Stuff like that. And one guy got me so worked up. I just turned to him. I go, "Is that necessary? You had to go there. You couldn't just go, 'Hey, thanks, move along.' You had to make your statement. And was it worth it for you? Because now you got my attention. Was it worth it? Are you not better than this? Shame on you." And the people behind me in line, there were actually 3 people who clapped. Because there's no reason to be this uncivil. I had people from the other campaign come up and start, they wanted to argue. And I'm like, no, come on, man. We're not going to solve this problem. We got a job to do. Let's do it. We can talk. We're grown adults. And this is where I'm so concerned that we can't even talk to each other. I mean, the number of people who got into line and immediately looked at me and said, "Don't talk to me." Okay, all right. In fact, one woman, she announced that, and I was talking to the woman in front of her, and she kept telling me, "Don't talk to me." And I'm going, "I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to her." And I asked the woman, I go, "Am I not talking to you? Will you be my witness if she presses charges?" Because I talked to her. And the woman looked at her and goes, "Wow, lighten up." And I think as a country, we got to lighten up. Now, were there good interactions? Absolutely. There were some really great people in line. There were some really great people who were out there. It was a beautiful day. They were out there ready to do their patriotic duty. They were out there ready to vote and participate in this wonderful, celebratory day of our democracy where we get to go out and vote. And then there were some who just, they had their slogans. I found it interesting that I found virtually no one that could articulate a policy position of Trump's that they particularly sided with without the jingoism. And I had a bunch of people ask me, and then I bored them, and they got bored and they walked away because I don't think they knew what the NLRB was. I don't think they knew what the Supreme Court had decided. So when you start talking about, the destruction of consumer rights, the destruction of workers' rights, the destruction of civil rights, that gets a little boring, a little dry. It's a lot better to call someone a name and say how much, thump the chest and say how much better we are. And the thing that gets me, and there was one particular encounter that I cherish, and I haven't told anyone this, not even my wife. I've been saving this one. All day long, I kept hearing people complaining because in the place that I was at, there were two precincts. If you were on the north side of the road, this particular road, you voted at one poll. If you were on the south side of this particular road, you were at a different polling place, both in the same building, but different areas of the building. And the people who were on the south side of this particular road got to go and not wait a second. They walked in, they voted, they walked out. Because virtually everyone in that precinct voted by mail. And the people on the north side, and oddly enough, I found out that this is where the major Trump supporters are, they all decided to show up on election day. And they were angry that they had to wait in line. And I said, well, you should have done what the people on the south side did. They mailed in their ballot. The number of Trump supporters who told me that they've got tons of ballots at home, that their dead mother has gotten 6 ballots, and just all of this crazy stuff. And I said, I don't know you. I'm not going to call you a liar, but I don't believe you. I don't believe that to be true. He goes, I've got them at home. And I go, I'll be here all day. Not going anywhere. Be here all day. Bring them back. I would love to see them. Prove me wrong. So, much to my surprise, his red Cadillac pulls up. He stops right in the middle of the road. He gets out and he has six envelopes. He goes, see? These are the ballots. And at which point I go, does anyone here surrendering their ballot to vote? And a woman says, yeah, me. And I go, can I see your ballot? And she goes, sure. I go, this, my friend, is what a ballot looks like. What you're holding, those pieces of paper, are from the Center for Voter Information. Those are not ballots. Those are requests for ballots. Those are them sending you something that you can request a ballot. You can't vote with those. Not going to help you. You can send all 6 of those in. You're going to get 1 ballot. That's how it's going to go. So you've been angry. You've been upset. You've been all lathered and twisted up in the panties over something you're wrong about, and badly wrong. And I know Rush Limbaugh told you that that's a ballot. It's not. It's from the Center for Voter Information. This is widely known, and I've got 100 of them at home. And thanks to my very efficient wife, I don't have one to show you because she shredded them all. And the first thing I did when I got home is, oh, please have one. Because I wanted to tell this story and then be able to show the people who are watching on our various channels this particular envelope. And look, it does look somewhat official. It does look like, oh, wow, absentee ballot. If you don't open it, and this is the really difficult part, if you don't open it, you don't actually know what's inside of it. And here's the thing. You may not have a letter opener at home, but everyone's got a butter knife. Not difficult. And this is one of those moments where Look, I wasn't trying to make the guy out to be a bad guy, but there's, again, so much that we claim to know that we clearly don't know. And he was insistent. And until I showed him the woman's ballot, and I said, this is what a ballot looks like. It's got the secret envelope. It's thick. Look at this. Hold this. You can hold it. It's not what you've got. You've got a big envelope. Not as big. A ballot, much bigger. You've got a smaller envelope, less significant. Actually, size does in this case matter. And, he kind of had this look like, oh, this was a mistake. And I'm going, look, I'm not trying to make you look bad. But the reality is you stood in line and you told everybody that you had 6 ballots at home. And I begged you to send all 6 of them in. Not because I like you, but because I'd like to see you go to jail. But don't be mad at me, because I do believe we need to punish voter fraud. We can't have that. But you also can't make it up. And over the next couple of days, we're going to hear a lot of made up stuff about voter fraud. And people like you are going to believe it because you fell for this. And this was an easy one to catch. You don't need to be very, very bright here. It's right there, the Center for Voter Information. What does that mean? It doesn't say the state of Pennsylvania official voter absentee ballot. It doesn't say that at all. It's the Center for Voter Information in Washington freaking D.C. So I'm hoping that we all now, since I've shared some of this, I'm hoping that we all take a breath. Because look, the Trump campaign right now is all over in courts all across the country trying to get the vote from being stopped. Here in Pennsylvania, they are working feverishly to stop the count of the absentee votes and the mail-in votes and the early votes. The only way that Trump, as I said yesterday, the only way Trump wins Pennsylvania is if they stop the early voting. If they can not count the ballots, that's his only prayer. Because voting is way up in this state. And when it's way up in this state, there's no prayer for a Republican statewide. Just not. Anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you gotten one of those absentee ballots that aren't really an absentee ballot? I'd love to hear it. Rick at thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On the Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 2009. That was the day more than 5,000 Philadelphia transit workers walked off the job. For 6 days, buses, subways, and trolleys that carried close to 500,000 commuters a day came to a screeching halt. The strike defied then-Governor Ed Rendell's orders for both sides to stay at the bargaining table. The union planned to strike during the World Series, but pushed back the strike date under threat of serious consequences made by the governor. For months, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, or SEPTA, stalled contract talks. The authority hoped to rip up workers' abilities to choose work assignments based on seniority rights. They also looked to eliminate jobs through speed up. The union was determined to hang tough despite a steady barrage of anti-union commentary in the media. Local editorials smeared workers as ingrates and whined that they weren't sufficiently thankful to simply have a job in such hard economic times. More cynical writers contended that sticking points on healthcare were resolved when SEPTA agreed to cover the cost of Viagra. Authorities, including Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter, claimed the union was being unreasonable in the face of such generous terms offered by transit management. But TWU Local 234 successfully defeated the boss's offense to wrestle away benefits and work rule concessions. The union demanded wage increases and limits to employee health care contributions. Irate union members insisted on independent audits to reveal where years of pension money went. They accused SEPTA of raiding the already underfinanced pension fund. The union eventually conceded on pension contributions, but the strike was a victory. TWU members showed that even in difficult times, a successful fight could be waged against cutbacks and hard-won rights.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So this is the day we've all been waiting for, and I'll tell you, I'm glad for my part of it, it's over. If I wake up tomorrow and it's like Groundhog's Day, and I hear the radio go, it's election day, I may drive off the bridge. After my day of doing the line, holding the line, I'll tell you that once every couple of years is plenty for me. But the fun now begins, and as I said earlier, the sad reality is there are going to be a lot of lawsuits, a lot of claims of fraud everywhere. Fraud, it's all over the place. Because ultimately, Trump needs the vote to stop being counted. I'm here to share some thoughts on Election Day and maybe what we can expect in the coming days. I've asked Jesse Lee to come talk with us. Jesse is the Vice President of Communications at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Jesse, thanks for taking time for us.
Great to be here.
So, I'm looking at this, and, I told the story just a minute ago of, I'm online, and all I hear is there's voter fraud. It's rampant. They're cheating. Those evil Democrats. And I'm going, the thing that you think is voter fraud isn't actually anything. But there's so much that we seem to believe that, well, I think it's going to be much easier to sell.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think to some extent, this was all a little bit kind of theoretical. These lawsuits were always kind of nonsense. Courts have largely been kind of just tossing them out. And, when you watch the results come in, it's kind of the rubber hits the road, and, you're asking people not to believe their lying eyes kind of thing. So, I think we're going to have a lot of votes and data coming in tonight. We already are. And I think it's going to be a pretty uphill battle for President Trump to convince people that, what you saw with your own lying eyes, that didn't happen.
Yeah, as I've been saying, look, the only way he wins Pennsylvania is if they stop the count. And
yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, he's been planning this for a year. He appointed a kind of lackey toady to the Postal Service to slow down the mail. I mean, really, that's kind of some super villain kind of stuff, right? And now he said, well, if the mail comes in too late, it can't count. It's a fraud. And, it can't be overstated the extent to which not only President Trump and not only Republicans in Congress who have blocked any aid to the states to kind of help make voting easy and, expedited during a pandemic. But down in the state legislatures, they've all been doing everything they can to slow the voting counts down. And, now they're saying, if the votes come in too late, they don't count. And one point that I think is particularly visceral to me is, there are tens of thousands of military ballots of people serving in places like Iraq and Afghanistan coming into places like Pennsylvania. And Trump's position is those ballots don't count. Throw them out. They don't get to have a say in the presidential election. And, it's absurd. And I don't think it's going to stand.
I hope not, because one of my fears is that now that Amy Coney Barrett is on the Supreme Court, now they've got that fifth vote that they're going to need to go the other way on what was the Pennsylvania case. Because if you look at what they did in Wisconsin, they decided that, votes, received after or received on the day, or postmarked on the day of Election Day, but received the day after, aren't going to be counted. But in Pennsylvania, we've got a couple extra days. North Carolina, they got a lot of extra days. I fear that they flip this back around and they say, nope, we're cutting it off.
Yeah, no, listen, it's obviously a legitimate fear. I think the media has actually been pretty responsible about this and kind of laid out the fact that there's going to be ballots coming in, and actually Trump doesn't get to just declare that the election is decided.
Right.
And we'll see what we get in tonight. But I think nobody's going to accept a verdict from President Trump saying Well, it's over. Just throw all those hundreds of thousands of ballots, including people serving on the front lines in Iraq and, Syria and, wherever else, and just throw them in the trash. Nobody's going to buy that.
Yeah.
And, maybe it'll come down to that, maybe it won't. But if it does, I don't think he's going to win that argument.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and this is, I guess, the question that is more rhetorical than anything. I talk to people, all the time, and especially today while on the line for people to voting, because look, they had to wait an hour and a half to get into their polling place, and in a very affluent area, I mind you, that had resources. It was that long of a wait for them for a good part of the day.
Right.
Every person that I asked, should we count every vote, regardless of their political party, agreed every vote should be counted. But most of my Trump supporters were added the caveat, legal ballots. And the justification that they then have is, everything that came through the mail's illegal. And it's kind of an interesting, that interesting caveat that they throw into this. That my vote should be counted because I'm here, but all of those other ones, because, I got 15 of them when they actually didn't, is part of what their belief structure is.
No, I mean, this is a really troubling kind of element of our democracy at this point is that, Trump and the Republican Party just have a, kind of laser beam propaganda machine at their fingertips.
Yep.
And, I worked in Pelosi's office during impeachment, and as soon as it started, you would see people showing up town halls just echoing these kind of Trump Fox News lines that were just not anywhere near reality, but they were like verbatim. You could just hear they were just churning out this kind of stuff, and it's not something where there's an easy solution, but it's a big problem where you can get kind of 35, 40% of the population just laser beamed into your propaganda.
No,
and
they've
because,
built
because they trust him.
Right.
They trust him and they trust Fox News. And it's totally misguided, but it's very hard to undo.
Well, they built the machine. I mean, to be honest, and you have to give the right credit, and I do. They built the talk radio machine that dominates the airwaves. They built Fox News, which dominates the cable news. They've got the pulpit, so to speak, and they've got all the people in the pews reading from the same hymnal. They're all on the same page, and they've done the organizing to get them to believe that. And what I get all the time is the both sidism argument, because as you're saying, you're showing up and they're on the same page. I get, the left does that too. Black Lives Matter does that too. And I'm going, nowhere near as well and as efficiently as you see on the right, because they've got I argue, a much bigger microphone.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it is one of those things where it's funny, the right wing and Republicans used to argue about moral relativism, right? Like all arguments are the same, et cetera, et cetera. And, there's just something different between, actually it's wrong for black people to get killed by the police when they're unarmed and they're, in a chokehold for 9 minutes or have a knee on their neck for 9 minutes, versus actually Trump just didn't say the thing that he obviously said. It's on tape. There's a transcript of it. You can see it right there. And 40% of the country says actually didn't say it. You know what I mean? Like, those two things aren't the same. To me, it's like that's where the kind of both sides do it thing breaks down. Is if I there's this whole thing about Hunter Biden's laptop, and I kind of made a tweet the other day, and it was like, well, I found Trump's laptop in my bedroom, and it said that the Saudi royal family rented out an entire floor of his New York hotel, and then he helped them cover up the murder of a Washington Post journalist. And that's actually true. That's something that happened. Now, if I went out and said seriously, I found Trump's laptop in my bedroom, you know, people would laugh me out of town. The left would laugh me out of town. Democrats would. I wouldn't be employed in Democratic politics anymore.
Yeah, I'd be asking you, what's he doing in your bedroom?
Yeah, exactly. And that's just not comparable to Trump saying, yeah, well, it turned out Hunter Biden dropped off his laptop in, this weird guy's, computer repair shop, and then also dropped off another laptop in this right-wing talk show host psychologist office in California. And guess what they both say? They both say Joe Biden's totally corrupt.
Yeah.
That's not a serious. Those things aren't the same. You know what I mean? And there does have to just be some kind of grading for points on whether something is just completely full of crap or not. So yes, there should be media that speaks for both sides. It doesn't have to be, CNN doesn't have to pick a side and whatever, but it's fine for talk radio on both sides to embrace, a certain kind of ideological perspective. What's off the rails is that Fox News, for example, has done something like 200 segments on Hunter Biden's kind of fictional Russian propaganda laptop in the last 2 weeks. There's no comparison on the left to that. And that's just utter propaganda. It's actually probably Russian propaganda. And, it's something that it's very hard to address because you just have to convince people to kind of get off the drug on this stuff. You have to convince people that, Fox News is lying to you. They're lying to you. And by the way, it's coming out of your pocket. They're lying to you so that Trump could pass a tax bill that gives 83% of the benefits to the top 1%. That's why they're lying to you. And it's coming out of your pocket.
No, I'm with you. And the question I keep asking is, when are we going to get anything done? There's so many people who are invested in Trump on a visceral level because, like you said, they believe he's their guy. They believe in him, and he's screwing them over because we still don't have an infrastructure plan. We still haven't invested in the future. We're still not doing the things that need to be done. We're not running our country in a sane and rational way. Look at the way that they've handled this COVID outbreak, and probably the worst handling since 1918. But they're invested in him that none of that's going to matter. It's always somebody else's fault. And I'm often curious, by these really very angry people, how the party that used to believe in personal responsibility, that used to believe in accountability, and all of that stuff are now the party of victims and blame. And I'm struggling to see where we go down the road, because I'll tell you, I couldn't have just a reasonable, hey, how you doing conversation with half of the people in line today, because they were you're one of them, and there's this the other side's the enemy kind of thinking. I go, look, I don't see you as the enemy. I see you misguided as hell, but I don't see you as an enemy.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's going to be a long, hard slog, and I wouldn't be surprised if we're dealing with it for decades to come. If Biden wins tonight, and we don't know, I think he is as well positioned as anybody could be to try to drive through that. If he wins, it's going to be because he has convinced working people that he's on their side and Trump's not. And he's going to have to continue to drive that. He's going to have to put up results, and he's going to have to put up results that people can understand and that, hit them kind of right in their pocketbook. And I worked for 8 years under Obama. I think, I think he was a great president. I think, he produced amazing results coming, inheriting, the Great Recession. And, But I think he was a little too favorable to kind of the idea of being a technocrat and, finding the perfect technocratic policy that would improve things the most, as opposed to, people talk about, a clean energy, infrastructure bill. Here's what I would do is you put a solar panel on everybody's house and you cut their electric bill in half. And every time they come home, they look at that solar panel and say, pretty good that Biden cut my electric bill in half. And you could have a technocratic argument that, like, that's not the best way to spend that amount of money and yada, yada, yada. But you gotta show people, and they've got to be able to see it.
Yep.
And
I agree with you.
Yeah. And, I think Biden is as well positioned to do that as anybody. We don't know how this election will turn out. It's kind of, going back and forth. I think there's already some, promising numbers out of Ohio, which would reflect that, people are seeing Biden a little bit differently and in a positive way. And, that might translate to Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, even if he doesn't win Ohio outright. That would be my encouragement to, a possible President Biden is, just make people see it.
You fix the pothole out in front of my house. Get that done.
Exactly.
We don't seem to be doing that stuff anymore because our votes don't really are of no concern to them because, well, they've got their big money donors. It just is what it is. But it's one of these things I'm sure we're going to get to the bottom of soon. And as we do, I'd love to have you come back and share some more thoughts. Jesse, I appreciate the time, man.
Yeah, no, it's always a pleasure to talk to you.
Keep up the great work. Jesse Lee, Vice President of Communications there at the Center for American Progress Action Fund. Look, I'm thrilled to hear Ohio is doing well. They're my sleeper state. They're the ones, I picked them on my map. You can go to my Twitter account. You can see the map that I've chosen. I got Biden getting 314 electoral votes and crushing Donald Trump, which we'll see if it plays out. But be sure to do your map. 270 to win is the website. Good stuff and fun to play along. Gonna take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to the Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day that became known as the Greensboro Massacre. Members of the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazi Party shot and killed 5 participants in a demonstration held by the Workers' Viewpoint Organization, later called the Communist Workers' Party. Workers' Viewpoint organizers had come to Greensboro in an effort to strengthen the unions at the Cone Mills textile plants. At the time, Cone Mills was the largest producer of denim in the world. African American mill workers faced discrimination and dangerous conditions, including breathing in textile dust that was known to potentially cause brown lung disease. Tensions between the communist organizers and the Ku Klux Klan began to mount. Disagreements also arose between the communists and other union organizing efforts in Greensboro. The Workers' Viewpoint group decided to hold a Smash the Klan demonstration. They coordinated the route of the march with the local police. But on that fateful day, no police were there to provide protection. In broad daylight, cars filled with Klansmen and Nazi members drove up and opened fire on the demonstrators. 5 people fell dead. A criminal trial was held in 1980, and a federal civil rights trial took place in 1984. Both times, the defendants were acquitted by all-white juries. In 2004, Greensboro began a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address their community history. The second chapter of the final report recounts how Milano Cottle, the Nazi who owned one of the vehicles driven that day, later bragged in an interview that the Klan destroyed the damn
communion with its actions against the marchers. After the tragedy, there was a strong backlash in the press against the communist organizers. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
I'm going to tell you my favorite story today. Evidently in Houston, there is a polling location at a place called Buddy's Houston. Now, Buddy's Houston is an LGBTQ bar. It's basically a gay bar that they have opened up to allow people to come and vote. In fact, they've got 14 voting booths, poll workers who speak English, Spanish, Vietnamese, Chinese, and Indonesian, and tons of people to help you, and it's beautifully decorated. But, it's one of those things where I would have loved to have been on that line to see the quote-unquote good God-fearing Christians having to go vote in the gay bar. It's kind of like an atheist having to go to a church. I think it'd just be hysterical to see. But I guess the first polling location in the country that is in a gay bar. I don't know where to go with that other than I think it's fabulous. Here to share some thoughts on the day, I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come talk with us, reporter at Raw Story. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, how are you?
I am great now that the day is finally over. The polls are closed. I think most people are probably done voting in Pennsylvania. So now it's just a matter of tabulating the numbers, getting those early votes counted, and checking this off in the Biden category.
From your lips to the goddess's ears.
So what do you think? A polling place in an LGBTQ bar, good thing?
Well, it depends on how good the drink specials are.
Okay. All right. I gotta wonder now. You've got me wondering. I gotta wonder if they had.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if you can do that. I wonder if you can sell liquor in a polling location.
I mean, they sell soup. I'll tell you,
Right?
the number one thing that I heard today of people complaining was that they weren't going to be able to buy soup and cookies inside the polling location. Because I don't know how it is where you vote, but here in the middle of where we are, once you go in, they've got tables full of stuff that all the little old ladies made, and no, now that you've interrupted the flow, but they've got tables of this stuff that they sell in some locations, and this place was one of them where I think it was the Kiwanis or somebody sold the soup, and they were all upset. No soup.
Oh, that's really cool. They don't have that in my polling place. I used to vote in my family's church, and then I moved to there's another place that I go now, but we don't get cookies, we don't get anything. It's really depressing. I voted by mail this year. In the primary, I voted in person, and I was so nervous too because COVID had just started. It was like April, and things were starting to get really scary. But I showed up, and I think I was like maybe fifth in line, so it was pretty chill. It was not that bad. But man, tonight it's so funny because I keep getting angry because people are calling things, while they called Maryland, and I know that there are people still in line. People are trying to say that the Senate race in Texas is won, and there are still people in line. So it's really frustrating whenever they've done stuff like that. The same was true in Oklahoma. They called in-house race, and people were still in line. So that always bugs me. And I don't know if it's because I'm old-fashioned or I'm really superstitious. But everybody who's saying oh, it looks like, we're going to win this. I'm just like, no, you go outside right now and you turn around 3 times and spit. Because that is just, I was so nervous because I actually took a sip of champagne, about 3 minutes before 9 o'clock. And, that's cut off for mountain time. And I'm like, okay, I will wait until mountain time and then I will have some champagne. But not a second before. So, I know it's not too early to be nervous. It's too early to be calling stuff. It's going to be a while.
No.
I'm curious I'm watching North Carolina. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago.
Right.
Because I think North Carolina is going to tell us a lot. So far, it's really close there. And Biden is up, but the lead is shrinking, and I don't know what is out still. Ohio is very interesting to me. I mean, I think we talked about it last week where, you know, I saw the poll numbers for Iowa and I was like, no, surely not. Like I just didn't believe it. But you know, the numbers that are coming in are very interesting, and there are places where Biden is outperforming Clinton a little bit. But again, like there's just not, it's too early
To call anything. And so I'm not going into, this state's gone this way, this state's gone that way. Well, I want all the votes to be counted. And this is where I think as Americans, we're just impatient. We want to know,
Yeah.
you know, the polls closed. We got to know right now. You know, I think you got to count every vote. You got to make sure that every vote is counted. And then we certify it. Then we make sure it's right. Because my fear is we get, you know, this is what I've been saying about Pennsylvania. The only way Trump wins Pennsylvania is if he can stop the votes from being counted. The numbers, the math just isn't there for Republicans to win a statewide election here, unless you can suppress the vote and keep people from voting. And overwhelmingly, Democrats voted in the early stage of the voting. So if tonight it's close, it's over. There's no way that Trump picks up votes in the after voting or the after tallies, and he's got to stop that.
Yeah, it would be really interesting though. One of the funny things I keep thinking about is, you know, Trump has been saying over and over again he wants to stop the count right at the end of election night, and we should know who won election night. What if he doesn't win on election night? Is he still going to be like, oh no, we need to count the votes, or is he going to back off? So it's going to be a long night. We started out by watching Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey for a couple of hours, just because like you turn it on for a minute and it's too early for this horse race. It's too much for this stress. So it's like, okay, I'm going to turn something else on. And I suggest that for everybody.
Yeah.
Like take a minute,
Deep
go watch
breath.
an episode of whatever, you know, on Netflix or Hulu or something, and, you know, sit back for a minute. Give your mind a second to calm the hell
Calm down.
down.
Just calm
And
down.
then turn it back on.
And you know the reason I thought we'd do the show today is just talk about the last couple of days. I mean, this has been a crazy ride, full of just insane moments. And I'm curious, where were your favorites? Is there something this election cycle that 20 years from now you're going to go, yeah, this is what happened. I remember when I was a little girl, this is what happened.
Back in my day, we had a president who was, talking about grabbing lady parts, and
that was last election. That's old news.
I know.
In fact, I had a guy today, before he told me he was going to stab me in the heart, who said that Joe Biden's a pedophile, and I'm going to go to, I think I can say hell on the air, right? I'm going to go to hell and burn for eternity. And then he said he was going to stab me in the heart, and I was like, wow, that's a bit harsh. But it was really
Is he stabbing you in the heart before you go to hell or after?
and I wasn't sure. It didn't really clarify. But he was kind of, way out there on the religion end. I think he thought he was going to be the guy with the sword to send everybody, packing. But it was one of these things where, this guy clearly was, deranged, and so much of what he believed just wasn't so. So, the whole grab her by the what thing doesn't matter to these people at all. They're
Right.
well far down the road from that.
It's sad. I kind of mess with those people more than I probably should.
Don't
Where
poke
you
the
just
bear.
be like, well, yeah. And let me tell you, I think we need to start killing babies very early if they're not Republican. Stuff like that, just like lead them, like agree with them and then lead them into something that's so absurdly wrong that, you're like, oh, well, you obviously agree with that, of course, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And you just sort of drag them down this hole of absolute disgust. And then you walk away and you're like, yeah, you're a wretched human. Congratulations. Let me know how that works out for you.
I kind of did something like that today because the polling place that I was handing out flyers to people at, they actually had two polling places in the same church. So if you live north of this particular road, you were in one line. If you live south, you were in another line. And the people who lived south didn't have to wait at all. There was no line whatsoever because from what the woman told me, 70% of the people that are in that precinct voted early. So there was nobody coming. And what I was doing to people, especially the angry people, I would say, you should really be mad because the Democrats, they get to go vote in that line. And they were just, you could just see the smoke coming, and then I'd let it go, and I go, I'm just kidding with you. Come on, it's a joke. They wouldn't do that, but they believed it. They absolutely believed it because it plays into their worldview that they're the victim.
Yeah. And I think too, that whole idea of asking the guy, clarifications for, wait, are you stabbing me in the heart before I go to hell or after? Because if you want after, wouldn't that mean that you're in hell with me?
Oh.
How did you get there?
I didn't give it enough time to develop because that's one of those things where, I had a lot of work to do that day, and getting stabbed in the heart early in the day would have just been bad.
Yeah, true. It's all fun and games until you get stabbed in the heart.
So are you surprised that there hasn't been as many? Because I'll tell you, I'm a little surprised. I'm scanning the news. I'm surprised there haven't been as many outward acts of shenanigans by the Trump supporters. I mean, I was in Harrisburg today, and they had the caravan running around with their trucks and their flags, beeping the horn and all that in the poor neighborhoods. And that's an intimidation tactic. But I didn't see it where I was expecting it. They just didn't seem to come out today.
I think I know the reason for that. Because they could not vote by mail because it's illegal, they had to stand in line for 12 hours to vote today. So they couldn't cause shenanigans and they couldn't cause trouble because they were too busy standing in line.
Yeah, I mean, no, the people in this particular very affluent neighborhood, they were angry that they had to wait in line because we've never had to wait this long before. I go, well, in the poor section
Somebody
of town,
wanted to speak to the manager.
Oh, there were tons of Karens there today. Yeah, but older Karens, not the younger Karen type. The old, very angry old Karens. More like borderline Carls, but just scary stuff. So, in your travels and what you're paying attention to, what's the takeaway from today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we should all learn to be much more patient and be chill and wait for all of the votes to come in. One of my favorite things that I saw is Leslie Odom from Hamilton did a version of the song "Wait for It" from Hamilton, and had this whole thing about count all the ballots, and we should just wait for it.
Right.
Just calm the hell down and wait for it.
Wait for it.
The thing I would recommend is watch some of the videos of Rudy Giuliani from the last couple of days. That's been probably my favorite thing that has happened this election, is to watch Rudy Giuliani slowly eat his own integrity.
Does he have any of that left? I mean, after the laptop thing?
He may have had a little bit, like between the cushions of the couch, like stuffed under a mattress somewhere. But after, because we found out, I think it was last night maybe, he told RT that he has the Hunter Biden laptop now. So the laptop's not in the hands of the FBI, which I thought he said it was. So now, why would the FBI give Rudy Giuliani the laptop back?
So
this whole thing, I mean.
Does he have the third laptop now? Is this a third laptop?
I don't know, because I think there are 60. I mean, at this point, I have a Hunter Biden laptop. So,
see, someone should start selling Hunter Biden laptops. Hunter Biden should start selling laptops that he puts pictures on.
Yeah, and it's just pictures of him being like, "Hey, girl," nothing completely clothed, maybe in a hat, a Sherlock Holmes hat or something, and be like, "Hey,"
with a big guy T-shirt.
Yeah, and just sell them for $50 more than what they do online, and it just comes with a picture on your desktop of him, or a picture of Rudy Giuliani with a fork in his head.
Oh, wow.
Stick a fork in him.
Stick a fork in him. So let me ask you, Ivan, one of the questions I'm getting people's thoughts on, what are we expecting in the coming days? As you're doing your reporting and following stories, what is it that you're looking for?
I think the thing about Pennsylvania, I'm really curious to watch what happens, obviously, because if you have 3 days of stuff that's going to keep coming in. So I'm curious how big the lead will be tonight. And so that's obviously one thing I'm watching. I'm still watching North Carolina, even though Steve Kornacki gets his concerned voice on whenever he talks about it. Because obviously I think that Senate race and the presidential race in that state will be a bellwether. The interesting thing that I'm seeing about Ohio is you look at those counties, on that eastern side, and those are those Pennsylvania and Ohio counties. And obviously Biden has been doing pretty well in the Pennsylvania side, and it's showing it blue on the Ohio side. And so I'm very curious how, if that is because, of Biden's just relationship with that kind of voter. I'm curious if that's going to carry over.
Yeah, I hope so.
Obviously, if we win one of those, it's game over.
I learned.
I'm trying so hard to be careful with my language because I don't want to predict anything. I don't want to. I'm just so nervous. I'm so superstitious about this stuff, and it makes me nervous just to think about, accidentally saying, I think he'll win this, or I think he'll lose this, and so trying to be careful.
No, because my concern again is that they're going to get the vote the count stopped. That's my biggest concern in all this. If you count every vote, I am sure that Biden wins. But if they're able to stop the count of some of the votes, it's up in the air then. It really is. But I learned something. I learned something today though that I didn't know, and I can't believe I didn't know this. I happened to look at the state of Pennsylvania's website with Joe Biden's name on it. I did not know what his middle name was.
Yeah.
And it's I go, how do I not know that? And how did Trump not mock that? He mocks everything else. I've never heard the name Robinette before.
Don John.
Yeah, but I've never heard the name Robinette before.
It's because it's a family name. I think it was a last name of somebody on his mom's side. Maybe.
Sure. However he got it, fine. I'm just saying, I can't believe he didn't mock it.
I know, especially because he randomly was saying Barack Hussein Obama. I think it was in Michigan. He was pulling that crap.
Yeah.
It's we all know.
Crazy.
We lived through this for 8 years.
Crazy.
I'm also, to be honest, I'm shocked that that they didn't try to birth her Kamala Harris more than they did.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that's coming. But hey, lots more to get to. I hope you'll be here Thursday for our regular slot. I wanted to get your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here. I look forward to having you back again. You're always great.
Thank you. Have a good election night.
I am looking forward to it. Our good friend Sarah Burris, reporter at Raw Story. Make sure you check out her work. She does amazing stuff. rawstory.com is the website. Quick break.
That united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1921.
That was the day the New York Times headline proclaimed striker rioting all over the city, dumped thousands of gallons of milk. Hyland threatens to seize plants. Hyland refers to New York City Mayor John Francis Hyland. Confrontations erupted between police and strikers, leading to multiple arrests. The striking milk drivers were angered because distributors had proposed cutting their wages as much as 20%. Milk, by the thousands of gallons, were taken from the trucks and stores and dumped into the streets.
Non-striking drivers, as well as milk dealers, were stoned and beaten. Meanwhile, not letting a good crisis go to waste, storekeepers profited mightily from the strike, gouging consumers as much as 40 cents for a quart of milk, what at the time represented as much as a 300% increase. The New York Times article noted the health commissioner said that some complaints had been registered with his department and he would act if profiteering became a menace. By November 26th, it was reported that 80% of milk was back being delivered as the drivers' protests dwindled. The post-World War I period was a time of prosperity in the United States, but not for everyone. The wealthy did very well. Speakeasies flourished, making many gangsters and bootleggers prosperous. However, ordinary working people still had a hard life. There were many labor strikes during the 20s. Some of the most notable were the 1920 Mattawan coal miners' strike in West Virginia, the 1928 Massachusetts textile strike, and the 1929 North Carolina textile mill strike. Sadly, the more things change, the more they remain the same. Today, we have a growing divide between the wealthy and the working class. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Here are some of the big public policies people clearly want, but lawmakers consistently ignore. Paid family leave time. Restrict the power of big money in our elections. Stop rent gouging by greedy corporate landlords. And assert real public oversight to stop police abuses. Now, the good news. In various states, we can vote directly for such policies that have been proposed as ballot initiatives. It's do-it-yourself democracy in action. Of course, bypassing the backroom chicanery of legislative bodies doesn't necessarily bypass the insider power of big money. But at least ballot initiatives force moneyed interests to do their avaricious dirty work outside, allowing us commoners to glimpse their greed. That's certainly the case of a money-soaked mega fight underway in California over Proposition 22, an abominable attempt by Uber, Lyft, and other multi-billion-dollar behemoths in the gig economy to stiff their own workers. These outfits have amassed their billions by claiming that each of their thousands of workers are independent contractors, not employees. Therefore, say the corporations, they don't have to provide health care or comply with basic labor protections. This year, though, a new California law rejected this blatant corporate ruse, at last allowing employees to get the essential benefits due to them. But a cabal of these giants has ponied up more than $200 million to pass Prop 22, exempting them from doing right by the people who do their work, 8 out of 10 of whom are people of color. If you wonder why our fabulously rich nation keeps sinking deeper into self-destructive inequality, look no further than Prop 22, one of the most underhanded PR campaigns in the history of ballot initiatives. This is Jim Hightower saying, for more information, go to Gig Workers Rising, gigworkersrising.org.
Hightower's commentaries are brought to you by the Hightower Lowdown, the monthly newsletter with Hightower's take on what Wall Street and Washington are up to. For information, visit hightowerlowdown.org.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So on my 270 to win map, I've got Ohio going to Biden. That's kind of my Hail Mary. That's kind of my I think it's because I'm from Ohio originally that I want my home state, the state of my birth, to come somewhere near the sane line. And look, I go back to my hometown of Cleveland and I look at all the factories that are empty. I drive past that Lordstown plant on the northeastern part of the state that Trump said, "Don't worry, we're gonna build this and more." That is now completely abandoned and vacant. And I think of all those people who he told, stay right where you are. We're making stuff great again. Only to have them lose their jobs, and some of these people lost their homes and everything that they had. So I'm hoping the good folks of Ohio go, nope, you didn't do what you said you were going to do. We need sanity. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on what's going on in the great state of Ohio. I've asked our good friend Brett Pransky to come back. Brett is a former candidate for state rep there in the state of Ohio and one of my favorite people. Brett, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, thanks for having me, Rick.
So how are things looking? I know it's really early to tell. Polls just closed a little bit ago, but What's your sense? What's your feel?
It's actually pretty interesting at the moment because I'm not sure in many of the areas how much of the vote is the early vote mail-in vote and how much of the vote is the same day vote. From what I understand, the count is coming in a little bit differently in different places, so they're having a lot of difficulty, really kind of predicting what's going to happen next.
Right.
I can say that there are a number of areas that seem to be trending toward Biden. Now, the perfect example is Delaware County. Now, for those who don't live in Ohio, Delaware County is just north of Columbus, so it's a suburb outside a major city. This is an area that historically has been Republican and Republican by large numbers. Tonight, so far, it's trending about 10, 11 points in Biden's favor, which is a massive turnaround. Now, again, this is a lot of early vote that we expect that to get a little closer. But if that isn't a 6 to 7 point Republican win, then this narrative we've been hearing about the suburbs going blue, it starts to look more and more and more real.
No, and like I said, on my map, Ohio is my wild card. What I'd love to see. That's just a little cherry on the top because I still have, I have Biden picking up Pennsylvania and Arizona, which if that happens, it's pretty much game over, along with Wisconsin and Michigan. Then that's stick a fork in it. It's done. But
yeah, and Ohio's a good bellwether on election night. So, for example. And I'm not saying that there's going to be a call coming quickly, but in the last 3 election cycles, Ohio has called before 11:30. So it's possible we could see a call in Ohio tonight. And if that call is for Biden, it doesn't lock the door for President Trump, but it really takes away most of his pathways. You can almost say that's it. He can't win.
Yeah, it puts the chain on the door at least.
It really does. It really does. There are very few paths to a Trump victory overall, but there are none of them that don't have an Ohio win, in their columns. So, if we turn Ohio blue, then everybody can get really close to popping the corks.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the media wars there because, I've been paying attention to the ads that have been playing on our radio stations and some of the ads that I've seen here, and much like I said when Hillary ran, all she put on the air was how horrible Trump was and that she's not him. It was nothing about how she's going to move the country forward or do anything. The last 2 weeks, all I heard is I'm not him. Oddly enough, what I'm hearing out of the Trump camp is how bad Joe Biden is, and not anything that Trump has done, no accomplishments, nothing of a second term of policy ideas. It's just attacking Joe Biden. And I got to wonder, for some of those, moderate Republicans, if there are any left, that can't play well.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, especially, here in Ohio where, we still have a number of kind of, moderate Republican districts that, that are fairly affluent and, have voted Republican in the past, that have been trending blue over the past several years. These are areas where Trump, with his rhetoric, has just been asking people to vote Democrat, essentially, and hoping to make that up by really firing people up in deep red rural areas. And I'm not quite sure there's enough for him to get it done. Now, keep in mind, Ohio went to Trump by 8 points in 2016. The fact that we're talking about it being close tells you a lot about the difference between 2016 and today.
Yeah.
Because there's no conceivable way that Trump could win Ohio by 8 points again. And when you consider that his entire lead in 2016, or how he took Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, was a grand total of about 78,000 votes, something like that. If Ohio moves even 5-6 points to the left, that 78,000, that tenth of a percent by which he won those other states, has got to disappear, because Ohio and these other states are at least that similar to each other.
Yeah. Now, the report came out yesterday, I guess it was, that there have been, I guess 100 million early votes cast, and there were only 138 million votes cast in 2016. And the numbers that I'm seeing, we're going to far surpass that. And it's my view, and you can maybe agree or disagree, that the higher the vote total, the better chance Biden has of walking out with this.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, just like I said earlier about, Ohio typically calls on election night. Another way that Ohio becomes a bellwether is, and I'm going to take you all the way back to 1896. In 28 of 30 elections since 1896, Ohio has predicted the winner. So we have a tendency to get these things correct. So if Biden wins here, that's a really good indicator of how the election as a whole is going to go.
Oh, that was what, 1866? You said
it was 1896.
1896.
28 out of 30 since 1896. I looked it up just a little while ago. So I keep hearing that Ohio always picks the president. Ohio always picks. That's what that's what a lot of the local coverage around here says. I was like, well, how true is that? And I looked back, and in 28 out of 30 so far.
So, like I said, on my map, I picked, that my home state, former home state, to be the sleeper. And boy, if that were to happen, it would be game over, because then, like you said, the path for Trump to actually win gets much more difficult.
Yeah, he would have to pick up something that no one thinks he's going to win, because it gets more difficult from here. I mean, Ohio is, by the polls was a true toss-up, kind of like North Carolina, where some polls had us, had Democrats a point or two ahead. Most polls had it, pretty close to a pure toss-up, and everything had them within the margin of error. So the fact North Carolina is close makes sense. It means that the polling is pretty close to correct. Ohio was exactly the same way. On a day-to-day basis, it was, a point for Biden. The next day it was a point for Trump, and back and forth throughout this entire cycle. So the fact that we're really close means those polls are pretty correct. And if that's the case, everything gets harder from here. Arizona is a bigger deficit according to the polls. Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, all much bigger deficits according to the polls. So if the numbers are holding true, and so far they are, then this is looking to go, Joe Biden's way. It's just we didn't get that knockout punch in Florida in first thing in the evening. Which, if that would have happened, there wouldn't be a whole lot of anticipation right now. Everybody would be pretty confident Joe Biden's going to win the race.
Yeah, but I keep seeing these stories. Like I just saw a story that Michigan's got almost 80,000 what they're calling spoiled ballots, and you see the Trump campaign is suing in Clark County, Nevada, which is Las Vegas. You see that they've got suits in here in Pennsylvania. They've got suits in the one down in Texas. They've got all of these lawyers and all of these people working their legal attempts to stop the votes being counted. My fear is while we're setting this up, and we're setting ourselves up for tomorrow if Trump wins, or the day after, saying, well, boy, you guys were wrong. I keep saying that the only way that Biden loses is if they stop the count, and we don't count every ballot. And you find in states like Michigan, where as you pointed out, it was a very slim margin for Trump, that here's almost 80,000 votes that might not be counted.
Yeah, and he's going to try. He's going to try all of this stuff, and he's going to bring ridiculous cases, because he's been doing that for 4 years. I mean, if you can walk into a courtroom and claim absolute immunity, which is a thing that doesn't even exist, you're not scared to walk into a courtroom and make ridiculous arguments. Now, the upside, where I think, why I think those court cases are going to fail, is when you think about it. How many reasons can you come up with not to count a ballot? There aren't many, and unless there's some massive error in how that ballot was filled out, or the person, who filled out the ballot isn't an actual person, well, then there's not a whole lot else that you can make a reasonable argument in a court of law why we shouldn't count that ballot.
Yeah.
So the argument on the other side that says count every ballot, You can just keep saying that over and over again. When they complain about this, or when they complain about that, or when they complain about the other thing, or when they bring this court case, our lawyers can just walk into the court and say, Your Honor, I'd like to count every ballot, please. It's a pretty convincing argument.
Yeah, and
I think it's going to be a really tough hill for the Trump campaign to get up if they want to try to make a case for why we shouldn't count ballots.
Well, I mean, the people that I talked to in the line that I was working today, I stood out all day handing out flyers at a polling location. The Republicans were very clear that all of the mail-in ballots are tainted. They're all fraudulent. They should all be thrown out. And only the people who showed up and voted, they've internalized this. And that's what they believe. And they would swallow the Supreme Court saying, no, we're not going to count any of those. We're going to go with the totals on election night.
Yeah, I believe they probably would. I mean, that's what 40 years of right-wing conditioning will do for you. But when you look at something, take the Harris County case in Texas, where they were trying to invalidate the drive-up votes. Even though they polled one of the most conservative judges in the entire state, that judge could not find a way to invalidate those votes. And at the end of the day, just threw out the case and said, I'm sorry, but this case is ridiculous on its face.
Yeah, well, I'm hoping there are more judges of conscience like that, because ultimately, if we lose the sanctity of the ballot box, if we're allowed to crush that, this whole experiment of self-governance is over. So last question I've got for you, because, Ohio, like I said, my sleeper state, I think a huge key. What should we be watching for in the next day or so? How are they counting the votes over the next couple of days? When do they expect to be done? Are they counting absentee votes after, obviously postmarked today, but after today, do they count if they arrive late? How's that playing out?
Well, I think it's going to be a couple of days before we know for sure, because there were ballots that just arrived today. There will be ballots that arrive in the mail tomorrow. In fact, I think we will count votes here in Ohio up to 12 days after the election, as long as they're postmarked by Election Day. So, in terms of when we're going to certify the vote, it's going to be a while, but we should know the majority of the story probably by late tonight. Now, the overwhelming number of mail-in votes and, the process of counting them, from what I understand, takes a little longer and is a little more cumbersome. So it could go into tomorrow morning, but I think we should know something fairly soon.
All right, I'm going to keep an eye on it. But, Brett, I appreciate the time, man. Good stuff.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Our good friend Brett Pransky giving us the shout-out from the great state of Ohio. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to head over to Wisconsin to get some thoughts on what's going on over there. Quick break. Right back.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2.
On this day in labor history, the year was 2009. That was the day more than 5,000 Philadelphia transit workers walked off the job. For 6 days, buses, subways, and trolleys that carried close to 500,000 commuters a day came to a screeching halt. The strike defied then-Governor Ed Rendell's orders for both sides to stay at the bargaining table. The union planned to strike during the World Series, but pushed back the strike date under threat of serious consequences made by the governor. For months, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transportation Authority, or SEPTA, stalled contract talks. The authority hoped to rip up workers' abilities to choose work assignments based on seniority rights. They also looked to eliminate jobs through speed up. The union was determined to hang tough despite a steady barrage of anti-union commentary in the media. Local editorials smeared workers as ingrates and whined that they weren't sufficiently thankful to simply have a job in such hard economic times. More cynical writers contended that sticking points on healthcare were resolved when SEPTA agreed to cover the cost of Viagra. Authorities, including Philadelphia Mayor Michael Nutter, claimed the union was being unreasonable in the face of such generous terms offered by transit management. But TWU Local 234 successfully defeated the boss's offense to wrestle away benefits and work rule concessions. The union demanded wage increases and limits to employee health care contributions. Irate union members insisted on independent audits to reveal where years of pension money went. They accused SEPTA of raiding the already underfinanced pension fund. The union eventually conceded on pension contributions, but the strike was a victory. TWU members showed that even in difficult times, a successful fight could be waged against cutbacks and hard-won rights.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So in order for my map to be correct, like we just talked to Brett Pransky in Ohio, Ohio needs to go the Biden way, and so does Wisconsin. And I'm so hoping that the good folks in Wisconsin didn't wait to mail in their ballots, because it's an absolute shame what came out of the Supreme Court. I believe every ballot postmarked before Election Day should absolutely be counted. And look, I guess tomorrow the U.S. Postal Service is being called back before the judge because they didn't meet what they were supposed to be doing as the judges did command. So I don't know that the judge is going to be thrilled that they didn't follow through on what they were supposed to do. But here to give us a thought on what's going on in Wisconsin, how the polls just closed, 9 o'clock Eastern time, I believe. I've asked our good friend Khary Pennebaker to come talk with us. Khary, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, brother. Thanks for having me on.
So what's the sense from the state of Wisconsin?
Look, I think we have done the work here in Wisconsin to make sure that we have turned the state blue again. And while some of the votes early may look one way, I think the work that we did in the early vote and the mail-in vote is going to tell a much different story than what you might be seeing right now.
And I've been saying that all across the board. Because I've gotten a couple emails from Trump supporters going, see, we're kicking his butt. I'm going, yeah, but we haven't counted the votes that happened early. My vote hasn't counted yet because I voted a couple of weeks ago. We got to make sure that every ballot is counted. And I've been telling my Democratic friends, don't get to the ledge yet. This is how it's going to go. Trump's going to get ahead early. And over the next couple of days, as we count the votes, and we have to count every single vote, that's when things are going to level out.
So here's the thing. This is the downside of having a 24-hour media cycle, and you have news organizations that call races on their own. None of that counts, right? So the only time a race is going to be counted, where it is decided, is when every vote has been counted. So while the AP or MSNBC, Steve Kornacki, whoever gets on their big board and they say whatever they want to say, none of that actually matters. What matters is when those local counties and those officials in those areas actually do all of the canvassing and they count all of those votes. And in some cases, it may take 2 weeks to do that. That's when the results actually matter. So right now, sure, some people might be on edge about things, and I don't blame them. There are some races right now I'm looking at, I'm like, oh my God. But at the same time, I understand how the process works. We have turned this election process into a TV reality show.
Yep.
This is not how it should be. We should allow the process itself to work its way out. In 2016, we didn't do this. We weren't sitting on pins and needles and all those kinds of things. And no other election have we done that. Donald Trump has turned all of this into a clown show. And I hope people are more aware of how the process actually works and allow it to play out, and so that we can actually get the results that are going to come in. We will actually see who's going to win these races and who won't.
Yeah. I had a great conversation with a guy who, a much older guy, worked on the Apollo project. That tells you how old he was. But, a really thoughtful guy, still voting for Trump, but a nice guy, very thoughtful guy. He said, look, we put a man on the moon. I said, I added, we've put a little remote control car on Mars. And we both agreed that there's got to be a way to do this a lot better and a lot more efficiently. We've got all these technology to do all these incredible things, and yet we're still deciding the entire fate of our governance and our country on a Tuesday for 13 hours.
And we could do it better. It's a matter of will. The way that we got a man or a rover on the moon is because the will to do so was there. I mean, we all have seen that speech by JFK talking about not wanting to do the things because they're hard or because it's easy, but because they are hard. And here we are with these monumental decisions being made, and we're still using rather archaic means by which to determine who wins one election versus the other. There's so many more things we can do to improve the way people are able to vote. One thing easy, well, not easy, but one thing that would be a good way of turning this around would be to make voting a holiday. So where you still got paid, you weren't impacted by, hey, I got to go find daycare, I got to take time off of work, I got to do all these things where you have all these impediments in front of you that might prevent you or dissuade you from voting. Make it easy. I am of the belief. Now, I mean, I've been on your show 30 times probably. You've heard me say this before. I'm of the belief I want every single person who is eligible to vote to be able to vote. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat. I want you to be able to vote because this is our chance to make a difference. This is our chance to make our voices heard. And I don't think that you can have a valid government that gets voted in if you don't count every single vote.
Right.
And that also includes when you prevent people from voting, when people can't take time off work. There are people still working right now. There are second shift people working. There are first, third, second, all kind of shift people working who don't have the ability to take off like you and I might be able to do. We don't account for that. There are people who might be still on paper who may not be able to vote. There's so many impediments for people to not vote. There's so many disincentives for people to not be able to vote that it is a crying shame that this is the way we engage our democracy. It's something that we should obviously take a hard look at and make sure that we change so that we can have an honest government that works for the people.
No, I mean, you can't have a government of for and by the people if the people don't get to vote. And look, today as I was handing out literature on the line, I met numerous people who came and would go, hey, how long is this going to be? And I'd have to tell them, from this point, it's going to be about an hour and a half. And they're like, right. I can't wait that long. Do you think it'll be shorter later? I go, maybe. I don't know. But it's been pretty steady, hour and a half all day today. And this is in a very affluent area. These people aren't used to waiting this long. And it was one of those things where, I got to get to work. And I got to wonder how many of those people didn't get to come back.
I mean, I get the same thing. And I've heard people complain about waiting times. And that's something else we need to address in making sure that there are more polling stations rather than fewer ones. But some of that is a contextual issue relative to this pandemic.
Right.
So in some areas where they weren't able to staff those polling stations, you simply have to reduce the amount of polling stations that are available, which tells you that we should be able to adapt in a fluid environment to make sure that we are able to get people the ability to, whether that's in person or absentee or whatever the case may be. But I mean, this whole thing goes to show you, though, there is one side that wants people to vote and another side that doesn't. There's a whole entire party that wants fewer people to vote. That tells you about their policy. They don't want more people to vote because they know their policy is bad. I am of the belief, as I said in the beginning, I want more people to vote, whether you're Republican or Democrat, independent, doesn't matter. Because that you have more direct impact on policy than you would otherwise.
Right. But here's the thing. Here's the thing someone's going to throw back at you. Here's the thing somebody's going to throw back at you, Corey, because I've admitted, like here in Pennsylvania, the more people that vote, the better it's going to be for Democrats because the voter registration is what it is. Here in Pennsylvania, 45% of the registered voters are Democrats, 31% are Republicans, 21% are in the other category. You could split them up between libertarians and Greens and the people who just don't know. and fluctuate back and forth. But the more people that come out, Democrats are going to win. I keep throwing it back at me. If the shoe were on the other foot, would you still be saying the same thing? And I want to believe that absolutely, as you're saying, every person should vote, because you cannot have a government of, for, and by the people, governed by the consent of we the people, if we the people don't have a voice.
So, I mean, I've said this a couple of times. Let me say it a different way. Dr. King and the great John Lewis and Malcolm X did not give their lives for Republicans and Democrats, right? They didn't want more people to vote that were only Democrats. They wanted people to vote. They weren't just fighting for Democrats. John Lewis, while an amazing Democrat, didn't talk about giving a little blood on that bridge just for Democrats. When he got hit by those police officers, he wasn't standing up just for Democrats. He was standing up for voters. He was standing up for black people and white people. It wasn't just that was the least partisan thing you could imagine. So when we cloak these issues in a partisan format, it really does a disservice to what people before us have already done to try to get more of us to go vote. Think about this. There are people who will camp out for concert tickets before the pandemic hit, or camp out for the next iPhone or for the next PlayStation. We need to make sure people are as energized and excited and understand where their place is when it comes to voting, what people have done for them to be able to do so. I think we turn this into this show, like a likability thing. Some person you want to go have a beer with. I don't want to go have a beer with my president. I want my president to be smarter than me.
Absolutely.
I want my president to be able to outsmart me, to make sure that person is the absolute best we could get in that position. I want that person in the highest office in the land to have qualities I want my kids to look at and not be ashamed when they see that person on TV. Right now, we don't have that.
No, you're absolutely
But
right.
yeah, we'll talk about this in a reality TV show format. That's how much we have evolved. We should be going the other way, and I think John Lewis is like turning over in his grave right now. Malcolm X and Martin Luther King are just screaming at us right now of what we've turned this into. We are so much better than this. We have allowed the underbelly of our society to take over, and the rest of us just crawl back in the corner and hide and want to, play nice. We are better than this. We deserve better than this. And we've got to do something better than what we've been getting right now, because this is simply not okay.
I'm with you. So last question I've got for you. Obviously the next couple of days are going to be important. What are you paying attention to on the ground in your state of Wisconsin to make sure that things don't go awry? Now, I know the Supreme Court case went against you in counting votes that show up tomorrow and beyond. But what are you paying attention to?
Well, I'm paying attention to every single race here in Wisconsin, but I do find it interesting that when you toy with the Postal Service and how they're going to be able to perform in delivering people's ballots, and you wonder why certain cases go one way or the other. It is astonishing to me that we allow someone to be so brazen in their effort to cheat. But I think here in Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Democratic Party has done a phenomenal job of getting folks out to vote, not just in person, but the early vote. We've had a serious, massive turnout in early vote that hasn't been reported yet. While, again, when you see some of these early numbers, it is shocking. But when some of these results come back for the early vote, the mail-in vote, I think some of these things are going to turn a different direction. And I think Joe Biden's going to win, and I think a lot of these down ballot races are going to win. It's unfortunate that Doug Jones was not able to pull off his race down in Alabama, but we were able to win in Colorado with Hickenlooper. There's some other races where we can pick up some seats here and win back control of the Senate.
Right.
And here in Wisconsin, we can pick up more seats here in the assembly. But I think ultimately, I want Republicans to finally, at some point, realize like y'all can't keep cheating. Just stop. And even if you like, I mean this. Like even if you still gain control, stop behaving as if it's always going to be that way, or if like you only have to govern for the people that voted for you. That's the sad part of it. That is sickening to me. Joe Biden said it clearly, like, hey, if I become your president, I'm going to be the American president, not the Democrat president, but the American president. I want every speaker of every house, or whether it's the assembly or whatever it's going to be, to govern that way. We have too many Republicans behaving as if they are the arbiter of what's going to happen in their state without considering what the people might think that didn't vote for them.
Yeah.
And just simply being decent. I want decency back. One quick thing before we go. I know we got to hang out, but one quick thing. My boss, who was a U.S. permanent resident for over 20 years, became a U.S. citizen this year. Today he was like, hey, I'm going to go vote. You want to go with me? He said, I'm going to give you 14 minutes to explain to me who I should vote for and why. By the time we get there, and I'm not going to tell you who he voted for, by the time he got there, I can assure you I walked away from that polling station with a smile. Now, having gone through that moment with him meant the world to me. There's so many people who are looking at this election as something bigger than them, not their taxes or like the few inches in front of their face. They're looking at how can my vote help other people. And I believe there are more of those people than those who are thinking selfishly. And I can't wait that we can celebrate those folks and have more people have a chance to vote for the first time. And things like that, our country is so much better than what we've seen over the last 4 years, and I cannot wait to get this man out of office.
There you go. Good stuff, Kari. As always, I appreciate you taking some time. I'd love to have you back again really soon as this plays out and give us some updates from Wisconsin.
I'm not going to sleep for a while, my friend, but anytime you want to have me on.
All right. Good stuff, Kari. I appreciate it, man.
All right,
Thanks
brother.
so much. Our good friend, Kari Pennebaker. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You listen to The Rick Smith Show.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1979. That was the day that became known as the Greensboro Massacre. Members of the Ku Klux Klan and the American Nazi Party shot and killed 5 participants in a demonstration held by the Workers' Viewpoint Organization, later called the Communist Workers' Party. Workers' Viewpoint organizers had come to Greensboro in an effort to strengthen the unions at the Cone Mills textile plants. At the time, Cone Mills was the largest producer of denim in the world. African American mill workers faced discrimination and dangerous conditions, including breathing in textile dust that was known to potentially cause brown lung disease. Tensions between the communist organizers and the Ku Klux Klan began to mount. Disagreements also arose between the communists and other union organizing efforts in Greensboro. The Workers' Viewpoint group decided to hold a Smash the Klan demonstration. They coordinated the route of the march with the local police. But on that fateful day, no police were there to provide protection. In broad daylight, cars filled with Klansmen and Nazi members drove up and opened fire on the demonstrators. 5 people fell dead. A criminal trial was held in 1980, and a federal civil rights trial took place in 1984. Both times, the defendants were acquitted by all-white juries. In 2004, Greensboro began a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to address their community history. The second chapter of the final report recounts how Milano Cottle, the Nazi who owned one of the vehicles driven that day, later bragged in an interview that the Klan destroyed the damn communion with its actions against the marchers. After the tragedy, there was a strong backlash in the press against the communist organizers. Like what you hear? Check out more at laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
A little story I saw today, just kind of to remind people how much money we're just spending on things that are unnecessary. We've got a billionaire who is our Secretary of Education. It has cost taxpayers more than $24 million to surround her with a security detail, because one time she went to a school in D.C. and they were mean to her. So now they've surrounded her with a security detail that's cost $24 million. And immediately my thought was, that $24 million could really go a long way in a classroom. But here we've got billionaire Betsy, who, just sucking up those tax dollars. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on what's going on in my home state of Pennsylvania, kind of a feel of what's going on. I've asked our good friend Abe Amoros to come talk with us. Abe is the head chief cook and bottle washer over at Amoros Communications, and one of my favorite folks. Abe, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick. I appreciate it. Good to be with you.
So we're seeing reports coming out that those evil people in Philadelphia are stealing the election because evidently they wouldn't let a Trump poll watcher come into a polling place because he didn't have the right credentials with the right place on it, but eventually they let him in. But that means all of the votes in Philadelphia have to be thrown out.
Rick, I got to tell you, there's an old thing in politics: when you're whining, you're losing. And so I really think that Pennsylvania is going to come out for Biden. May not be by a whole lot, but by the end of Friday, I think we're going to have a really good idea as to what took place. What encourages me, though, what's going to make me sleep well tonight, is that 1.6 million Democrats requested mail-in ballots, as opposed to about 600,000 Republicans. And I was telling all my friends and loved ones, don't be surprised if you see a bunch of red at the polls today standing in line.
Right.
Because these people don't believe in science. They don't care about social distancing. They don't care about you. They're basically going to do whatever they want to. And I think that the results are going to be misleading. Now, there's a lot of noise out there. So we have to train ourselves to be disciplined and patient and just understand that what you read right now can change in the next 15, 20 minutes.
Right.
And this is going to be a marathon. It's going to be something that's going to take place over the next several days. And I'm encouraged by other factors, such as Arizona. It looks like it's going to go for Biden. And Ohio is still a horse race neck and neck. It's still too close to call in Florida. Michigan, right now, I saw that there has been, they're starting to really count the votes in Detroit now, which is going to push Biden in an upward direction. But we'll see. We'll see. I mean, we have to just understand that, the news media is tripping over itself right now for content,
right,
for material. So we just have to say, look, it's the numbers that matter, because every vote has to count.
And at the end of the day, this is one of those things, as I've said all throughout today's program. I spent the all day today at a polling location, handing out literature and talking to voters, and had for the most part a good time doing it, except for the two people that wanted to stab me.
Oh my!
And some of the shenanigans that went on there. But the thing is as I'm looking at this, every person I talked to, and I said, hey, do you believe every vote should be counted? Regardless of their party affiliation, everyone said, yeah, in theory, we want every vote counted, especially if there are votes. But it's interesting that the caveat that comes with it is there's this belief that all the mail-in ballots are going to be, stuffed with dead people. Because I actually had a guy who went home and brought back, what he claimed were 6 ballots that they sent to his dead mother. And what they were ballot applications that were sent out by the Center for Voter Information. But he believed, internalized, that these were all ballots. He could send them all in and he could vote on every one of these. And that's what everyone was doing. And we're stealing the election. And, I was glad he came back. But there's this thing that they've internalized that that it's being stolen from them.
Yeah, there is a disconnect there, and the sad part is the Republican Party has really abdicated its role as a party that protects its own. They have let that group of folks out to the wolves, and Trump has just taken full advantage of the ignorance and the fact that a lot of these good people don't know any better, sadly. And I mean, I'm not trying to be patronizing, Rick. It's just that, I mean, it's really hard to have a discussion and an intelligent discussion with some of these folks. I was at a polling place in New York today for 6 hours, and the level of enthusiasm for the Republican Party was not there like it was in 2016.
No.
And you know what? I had just a few shenanigans take place. There were 3 people that walked in with Trump hats and shirts, and of course that's electioneering, but they weren't going to say anything because it's a Republican poll. And then one fella tried to get my goat by playing a pro-Trump song, and he kept eyeballing me to see if I could, if he'd get a reaction from me. I didn't take the bait. I just treated it with the contempt that it deserves. Silly things like that, but it was nowhere near what I was prepared for, Rick. I got to tell you, man, I really expected some words to be exchanged, some unpleasantries. None of that. In fact, by 9 o'clock, the line had really thinned out, and by 1 o'clock, it was basically non-existent today. So, and that's York County, which is solidly red, and one of the 3 counties, Rick, that the Cook Political Report identified as having pushed Trump over the top in 2016. So, I just didn't see that level of enthusiasm. And I think when all the mail-in ballots are counted, you're going to see Democrats winning 4, maybe 5-1. I mean, I saw some preliminary numbers tonight, which were mind-boggling, but you can't get excited over that until every vote is counted. Yep. And, the Secretary of State has been on the airwaves all evening just reminding folks, be patient. This is going to take some time. We just started opening these envelopes today because our Republican-controlled legislature didn't want Pennsylvania to start mattering until today.
Isn't that insane? I mean, like I said earlier, I met an older gentleman who told me that he worked on the Apollo project, which I'm like, wow, that that's incredible. And we had this conversation about all of this advancement we have. We literally put a guy on the moon. We put a little robot car up on Mars. We've done all this amazing stuff, and yet we're still doing this, and we're still waiting. It seems like we could build a better mousetrap.
Absolutely, yeah, no doubt.
And I like I like the mail-in ballot. I like the procedure that I went through, and I think I like it so much that I would like to advocate for it. They sent me a ballot to my house. I reviewed it. I decided who I was going to vote for. I colored in the little circles. I put it in the little secret envelope. I stuffed it back in the envelope, and I hand-delivered it to my local county election office where there was a nice deputy with a mask on. Good for him. Right in front of the box. I put it in the box, securely in the box. The next day, they sent me an email saying, "Hey, we got your ballot."
Right.
And I think we should be doing that for weeks in advance so that you don't have to stand in line for 2 hours hoping that you can get to work on time and complaining about. I think there's a better way of doing this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I would do that again over and over in the foreseeable future, Rick, because it's efficient. It worked. And I, too, received an email when the ballot was received. And, I take my 87-year-old father to the polls normally. But this year, I couldn't. I just, there was no scenario where I was going to do that because I wouldn't want to expose my pop to anything. And so I helped him fill out his application. He got it in the mail. He filled it out. He sent it back. It was easy. He loved it. And the fact that he didn't have to get in the car and drive to the polling place and stand in line, because that's real, too. I mean, people stand in line for hours on end. And, the wind was whipping outside today, and the line was coming out of the building. So some of those folks were pretty uncomfortable with, 30, 40-mile-an-hour winds at the top of a hill. So, I mean, these are all real things. And there was a 96-year-old woman, Rick, who came in at 10 o'clock, and the line was still too long for her. So she decided to come back at 1 with her daughter-in-law, and she got in, no problem, in and out. But I'm thinking of folks like her that would benefit from a mail-in ballot. So I'm with you, man. I would do that in a heartbeat, and I would also advocate for it because it's very efficient, safe, and maintains the integrity of the vote.
See, now that happened to me on the line today, where a couple of people, obviously older, they weren't going to be able to stand for an hour. I actually went up, and there was the one woman who was, was the person who was coordinating the line, who worked in the polls, and I would go up to her and I go, hey, I've got a lady here. She's older. She's struggling. Can you bring her through the line? All these healthy people can wait. Didn't make me real popular, but I wasn't popular anyway. But it was the right thing to do. I mean, you have these people who they can't stand for an hour. Get them through, get them out, get them gone. It's not that big of a deal. And I think just as a society, we should be figuring things out on how to make it easier for them and the rest of us as well. But let me ask you this from a strategic standpoint, because I've been concerned about the idea that Democrats overwhelmingly, and look, my Teamster union did the same thing. They were telling their members, do the mail-in ballot, do the early voting. Do you think it's going to be a problem down the road? Because I fear that tonight, Biden's going to be behind as they count the ballots tonight. And Pennsylvania is a key state, and I fully expect Donald Trump in about an hour to go, we won Pennsylvania, we won the election. And then as we count the votes, as we've been saying, then you're going to start hearing the victim card being played. They're stealing from me. They're rigging the election, all these illegal ballots. That's a concern that I have. So do you think it was the smart thing to do to put so much heavy weight into the mail-in ballot, or was it just, it was right because we don't want people getting sick?
It was right because of COVID, Rick. And secondly, if we had a forward progressive thinking legislature that would allow the Department of State and the counties to start opening those mail-in ballots early, then we wouldn't be in this shape. I mean, we could do this more efficiently. Other states do it. I mean, look, Florida's going to have a declared winner tonight. Ohio's going to have a declared winner tonight. Texas is going to have a declared winner tonight because they're able to start counting those mail-ins either on election day or a few days before. They give all those workers a head start. Here in Pennsylvania, we've got to wait until today. Why? Because we have a paranoid, Republican-controlled legislature that's in play. And you know what, Rick? One of those chambers may flip tonight. The House may flip blue tonight, depending on the turnout in the Southeast and the Lehigh Valley and parts of Western Pennsylvania, especially up in the Erie part of the state. But we'll see. And we may pick up some seats in the Senate. Not enough to get the majority, I don't think. We need 5. I don't think that's going to happen. We're looking at maybe 3, possibly 4 if some numbers hold up. But again, it's just too early to tell. But, if we had a forward-thinking legislature that had confidence in its election officials at the county level, then Pennsylvania would be in play a lot quicker. But listen, I can wait until Friday to make sure that every vote is correctly counted and everybody's mail-in ballot counts. I'm a big believer in that. I'm in no rush to call this erroneously and celebrate prematurely or, douse my sorrow in a case of beer prematurely either. So, we just have to be patient.
Yeah, good stuff. Last question I've got when are you going to run for something? I want to see you on a ballot. How about running for Dauphin County Prothonotary? Can I get you to do that? I met the incumbent Prothonotary today, and most people don't know what a Prothonotary is.
Right.
And look, here in Cumberland County where I live, they've been trying to get rid of the position because it's all computerized anyway. But this guy was just such a pain in the neck today that I told him, I said, look, you've now made me angry. I am going to work for whoever runs against you. And I'm going to seek someone out to run against you simply because you were such a pain in the neck.
Well, see, I'd have to overcome my first obstacle, Rick, which is learning to spell Prothonotary correctly, because it's such a tricky word. But and then having, my voters to pronounce it correctly. But at any rate, I appreciate that's very kind of you. But I'm actually going to be running away instead of running for something.
I hear you. No, and look,
it's all good.
Given the divisiveness, of where we are, I give people credit who are willing to step up and throw their name into the fishbowl and take the abuse. There was a delightful young woman, Brittany Rodas, who is running in the district that I was handing out flyers for, and she's just a wonderful person. Yeah. And some of the stuff that people were saying, there was a guy. Figure this out. There was a guy, I guess she handed a flyer to. He literally blew his nose in it and threw it on the ground.
Oh, see, that's disrespectful at so many levels. That's not a political gesture. That's just a despicable act by a very small human being. And Rick, I am telling you that after this election is over, it's going to take some time for people to heal and come together as human beings. I know family members that aren't talking right now because their feelings are so visceral towards each other because of who they're supporting. And we got to get past that, man. It's going to take months. It may even take years because of the damage that this person in the White House has caused.
Yeah. We'll see how this plays out. I know that my union is being torn apart by it, and I know a lot of groups that are. I know a lot of families that are. And the hope is that once this is over, once we count the votes, once we know where we're going, that maybe the healing can begin. That's the hope. But Abe, I appreciate the time as always. Love having you on. Love talking with you.
Thanks, Rick. Likewise. Thank you.
Good stuff. Thanks so much, man. Our good friend Abe Amoros, Chief Cook and Bottle Washer there at Amoros Communications. And, to highlight what he said, I mean, the sad reality is as my fear has been over the last couple of weeks and kind of looking into the crystal ball, looking down the road in what's possibly coming is that victim card and the angry people today who truly have nothing to be angry about. The people that I met, this country has given them everything that you could possibly imagine. They have done wildly well. The economy has been very good to them, and yet still very, very angry. And I'm trying to figure out how you move forward with people who are of the destroyer mentality, because we got a lot of work to do, and a lot of things aren't being done. As I was talking to the guy who worked on the Apollo project, I go, sadly, we can't do that anymore. We as a country can't accomplish what you did. We can't think big anymore because we're mired in this hatred. We're mired in this ripping each other apart. I want to do big things. I want to do incredible things. I want to do amazing things. I want to leave a country for my kids and my grandkids that like my grandparents left to their kids and so on. I want the pothole down the road filled. Bare minimum. I want a bridge that I don't have to pray to get to the other side. Bare minimum. I mean, this isn't too much to ask for in the wealthiest country in the history of civilization at its wealthiest moment. Not a high bar. And yet we still haven't done that because we're too busy hate tweeting at 2:00 in the morning. We're too busy calling people names. And it's amazing how many names I heard today thrown at Joe Biden. It's amazing. I mean, and look, I get from them that, well, the left does the same thing. I go, yeah, not to your face, not to my face. We can be civil. We can disagree without being disagreeable. We're both going to spend time together. We should make it pleasant, even if we do disagree. But at the end of this, every vote, and we have to fight for this. We have to make sure that tomorrow we wake up and demand every vote gets counted. We reach out to our elected officials and make sure that you tell them, make sure every vote is counted. The barest minimum is every vote is counted. None of this Al Gore stuff, count this county or this county or these set of count. Every vote is counted. That's simple. I appreciate you tuning in tonight. Appreciate you, sharing some of our thoughts. Tomorrow we should have a better picture and maybe, an idea of what needs to be done to help make sure every vote is counted. I appreciate you being here. Thanks so much. If you missed any of today's program, thericksmithshow.com is where you get the podcast. The Rick Smith Show app on the smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show. Email Rick at